Welcome into Sports Tonight. Bailey Burmaster alongside Lee Smith.
What's up?
We have a Hump Day edition. It is Wednesday for
Hump Day.
you of Sports Tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about Raheem Morris as his coaching staff takes shape before we hear from him on Monday. We're going to talk to Michael Rothstein of ESPN about what he thinks of the hire and what's to come moving forward. Huge win for Georgia Tech, so we got to talk about it and hear from Coach Damon Studemeyer about it and the players. And then Georgia has a big one tonight at home as well. But let's start with Raheem Morris. He is taking shape. So they're keeping on same special teams coordinator. They brought in a new guy for defensive coordinator.
Yep.
And then also brought in a new offensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator was Zach Robinson.
Yep.
Which is interesting. He's a young guy, has been with the Rams working with Matt Stafford. But they also announced a plethora of other hires today as well. So we'll run through those real quick. Defensive line, Jay Rogers. Chief of Staff, Steve Skarnecchia. O-line coach, who's Dwayne Ledford, is being retained. Same with TJ Yates at quarterback's coach. The other ones have all pretty much been announced, but I did want to talk. Maybe I'm biased. You
Let's
know where I'm
go.
going with this, but I am so happy they are keeping Jerry Gray.
Yeah.
I've been very vocal on this show about how much I think he is a great coach, and covered him with the Packers, have covered him here, and so many players speak so highly of Jerry Gray. I also think he gives great insight. He's just a really knowledgeable coach. So
So is there like a tangible thing, I don't know, is that you think it's a tangible or more intangible thing that he brings? Because I mean, he's been in the league forever. I mean, he knows his stuff.
I think it's hard. I think you could go either way, but something that has consistently been said, whether it was when I was covering the Packers and it was with Jair Alexander or even with corners here with the Falcons, they say the crazy thing about Jerry is he literally can predict the play that's coming your way and as a DB what you need to do and how to react to it. And how he's able to translate that to his players is massive.
Yeah.
So I think that is really the thing that has stuck out to me over the years. What are your initial thoughts on all these?
Well,
hirings?
I mean,
anything crazy?
Well, not anything crazy, but I mean, Jerry Gray, keeping him like you said. I mean, it feels like AJ Terrell, not quite as good this year as he's been, but not bad at all. Mm-hmm. And Jesse Bates just took everything that basically was.
You can't say a negative.
I mean,
about
goodness,
Jesse Bates.
he just dominated. He's going to the Pro Bowl, so I mean, he did do something really good. And as long as you've got two of those guys back there, I mean, goodness, with Jerry Gray coaching them too, I think you'll have a really good combo.
Before we hear from Michael Rothstein, I want to ask you, Lee, what is the biggest question you want answered going into Monday's press conference with Raheem Morris? Like, what is the one thing you would want to ask him to get an answer to?
Really, like, what are you going to do offensively? What is your scheme going to be? Like, what do you want your offensive identity to be? Because Arthur Smith had an idea, Dan Quinn had an idea, and they couldn't execute them. So that's pretty much why they're not there. So, yeah, I just want to see what they're going to do with those 3 first-round picks. If they're going to keep them all, if they're going to trade them, if they are going to trade anybody, what are they going to try to accomplish? What kind of system are they going to go for? Is it going to be 3 yards, a cloud of dust? Or are we going to try and throw the ball around like everyone else in the modern NFL offense?
Well, so people are insinuating that with Zach Robinson and what the Rams did, they ran a lot of 11 personnel, which was the least personnel that the Falcons ran. So you can bet they're probably going to throw it more and get more receivers involved, which is probably great news for a player like Drake London. Or maybe we finally see Bijan in the pass game a little bit more.
Or, I don't know, throw the ball to your first-round pick from 3 years ago, Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, maybe getting him more involved as well. For me, I think I would like to hear, and this isn't anything crazy, but just I would find it interesting if Raheem and Arthur Blank both speaking on where they feel Raheem has grown the most since 2020.
Yeah.
Like, what would Arthur say and what would Raheem say about himself? Because I'm assuming they'd be probably different answers, but both positive answers and give a little insight to what was done with his time with the Rams. I was able to sit down with Michael Rothstein on Zoom of ESPN, who covers the Falcons. He's out there in Flowery Branch with us all the time, to just talk about this hire, what he sees, what he thinks, and where he thinks the Falcons are headed. And of course, the question everyone is discussing is, what are they going to do at quarterback? So for starters, Rothstein, I'm curious what your initial thoughts are on this, because 14 candidates, second interviews, everyone thinks it might be Bill. Raheem has a connection to the team, but give me your initial thoughts.
I was surprised because it felt in some ways like there were almost two searches going on, right? Like the beginning of the search, it was like all you heard was Belichick. All you heard was Belichick. Belichick has his first interview, his second interview. Now, part of that reason, of course, was that most of the candidates they were talking to, they couldn't meet with the second time. They couldn't meet with in person because of NFL rules. The only guys that they interviewed that they could were Bill Belichick and Jim Harbaugh, and then a couple of other guys that they didn't meet with, and like Leslie Frazier and David Shaw, and then Mike Vrabel, who they actually met with on Wednesday night. Had they met with him earlier, they could have met with him a second time in person. But that created a whole bunch of conversation around Bill Belichick, and there was a lot of reporting around that. But then things seemed to turn on Saturday. On Saturday night, I reported that this was wide open. A lot of other people also reported that in the days after. And then we started seeing, after that second Bill Belichick interview, we started to see more first interview requests, a whole bunch of second interview requests. They get an interview in on Sunday night with Ben Johnson after he wins the divisional round game and go to the NFC Championship. So it was like, okay, you're not doing that if you're not at least serious about opening things up. Like, that's just not an optics play. That's okay, we're thinking about this. So I thought this was going to go on for a while. The sources I had talked to really throughout the beginning of the week all seemed to indicate this was maybe going to go on a little while. I mean, as far as yesterday, even someone I was talking to was saying that. And then around 4:00 today, it's done. And it's Raheem Morris. It's a guy that was here 3 years ago. And you're sitting there and you're like, oh, okay, I guess this is what they're doing. And my initial reaction was honestly surprised. That's the best way to put it.
Do you think in any way, shape, or form the Falcons brass felt pressure to get something done quicker because, more positions were starting to be filled? Jim Harbaugh ends up going to the Chargers. Do you feel like there was any movement of like, okay, we need to move this further along quicker?
Has anyone told me that? No. Does it feel like that a little bit? Maybe. If they did do that, I don't understand why, because there were three. Well, it started today at 4 jobs, but then the Panthers hired Dave Canales. Dave Canales was never in the conversation here. So then you're down to 3 jobs, right? Washington, Seattle, and here. Now, Raheem Morris is supposed to apparently go on a second interview to Seattle. So maybe they identified Raheem as their guy and they want to make sure that Seattle wasn't going to happen. Because once you get a guy in the building, you never know whether he's going to leave or if he's going to become your guy. So they were talking about Slowick this afternoon, right? So like that tells me, okay, maybe there was a sped up thing here at some point. But the thing is, they had 4 second interviews theoretically that they were planning on taking next week with the 2 Detroit coordinators, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, Anthony Weaver, and Mike McDonald in Baltimore. So they were planning a long haul strategy because they knew they couldn't talk to those guys until Monday. And then something changed. So maybe, I don't know if it was they targeted Raheem Morris as like their first or second choice. And they were saying, okay, you know what? If he goes to Seattle, that puts us in a bad spot type scenario. Or maybe Raheem Morris was their guy all along, but I don't understand then why you put 4 slips in and why you let Raheem Morris leave the building on Tuesday.
That leads me into my next question even. They could have put Raheem as the head coach when he was back here acting as an interim after Dan Quinn,
Sure.
But they didn't. So 3 years go by, here we are, they bring him back. What do you think Raheem Morris has learned or grown the most in those 3 years to now is the opportunity that Arthur Blank want to give him?
Sorry, to be fair, I was not here in 2020. I was covering the Detroit Lions when they were going through their own end of a bad era in Matt Patricia. So I don't know, but I did see from afar. I actually covered, because that was the COVID year too, so I covered it from afar. But that the Lions Falcons game where Todd Gurley fell into the end zone when he needed to fall on the one. It's a lot of people in Atlanta remember that. But what you saw was you saw a team fighting hard and playing hard for Raheem Morris then. But it's very difficult for the interim head coach to become the head coach right out of the gate, because there's still like that interim title that hung on. Now we saw in Vegas that the second time around went with the interim, but remember they had Rich Bisaccia, who players wanted, and instead they went with Josh McDaniels. So I think that they probably just sat there and said, you know what, we like Raheem, but we want to get a fresh start out of here, because don't forget they're hiring a new general manager at that point too, in Terry Fontenot. And Raheem Morris did a very good job in Los Angeles with the Rams defense. He did. I mean, they won a Super Bowl there, right? Now, sure, you have Aaron Donald, you have Jalen Ramsey, those things help, but the guy still coordinated a heck of a defense. But Bailey, more than anything else that comes to this, like, I get the sense the Falcons, once they kind of explored the Bill Belichick option, I get the sense that they maybe wanted to try to find someone who fit what their culture is, or what they could believe their culture is, and their own guy. I've seen this work before. I saw it work in Detroit, and we see where Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes are right now. But you look at what Pittsburgh typically does with their hires, what Green Bay typically does with their hires. The successful organizations in the NFL know their culture, know themselves, and hire to it. And I do wonder if that's what Atlanta feels like they're doing here. But the truth is, we will not know for probably 2 to 4 years whether or not this hire will work out, or whether we're sitting here again in 2 to 4 years having this conversation about whoever the next head coach is.
I'm curious what you find a bigger thing that needs to find a resolution. One, what will Raheem Morris and obviously probably Rich McKay, Arthur Blank, and Terry Fontenot do at quarterback? Or is it the pieces that Raheem Morris could bring with him on his coaching staff that could make this even maybe probably a bigger splash? There's already reports out there that Zach Robinson with the Rams is a huge get for possibly OC for the Falcons. Would that be a splash? Do we have, I mean, it's really hard to see, yes, head coach is important, but what they do at quarterback, you could argue, is even more important.
Oh, it's quarterback. Stop. Full stop, end sentence. It's quarterback, because all you need to do is look at the last 3 years under, or really the last 2 years under Arthur Smith, because they did have Matt Ryan, who, while getting older, Matt Ryan was still productive, and they won 7 games with the roster they shouldn't have in 2021. Same thing, by the way, in 2022 with Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder. But you saw how quarterback play can destroy expectations this past season. It all comes down to the quarterback. If Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot and Kyle Smith, who's their assistant general manager, and Rich McKay, who's the CEO and apparently is involved in football operations, as we learned 2 weeks ago, if they figure out the quarterback situation, then Raheem Morris has a really good chance of success, because the roster is good around him. If they don't figure out the quarterback situation, then it's real trouble. And we saw that with Arthur Smith, because that's the thing. Arthur Smith wins 2 more games, we're probably not having this conversation today. And if they had found the right quarterback, then again, we're probably not having this conversation, because they probably win the NFC South and make the playoffs. It all comes back to quarterback, because you can have the best staff in the world, but if you don't have quarterback play, and quarterback play that's at least average, you're in trouble in the NFL.
Which is the interesting part. They could either bring someone here to Atlanta, or they could draft someone. Do you think, with the combine coming up late February, early March, then after that it's obviously the draft, would you anticipate the Falcons trading up at all?
I think it's too early to say, because I think you need to see a little bit what the free agent market actually looks like, because there are a lot of guys that could be on the market that we don't know if they're going to be. Guys like Kirk Cousins, guys like Baker Mayfield, although it seems like Baker and the Bucs might have found something there. But Raheem Morris has familiarity with Baker Mayfield, because obviously Baker Mayfield was with the Rams toward the end of last season. Ryan Tannehill, in theory, could be out there. Russell Wilson could be out there. There are a handful of guys that maybe you bring in. Like, do you want to take the Joe Flacco experience. I don't know what you do there exactly, but I think you do probably bring a veteran in. And then depending who that veteran is, that probably dictates the draft and what you maybe do there. Because if you're bringing in, say, we'll just use Joe Flacco as an example. Let's say they bring in Joe Flacco. Well, your plan is that's not a long-term solution. So you're probably going to try and draft a quarterback and maybe even trade up to get one. And then it becomes kind of a caretaker position type scenario. If you were to get a Kirk Cousins or a Russell Wilson, maybe you're looking at don't need to get a quarterback in this class. If one falls to us that you like at 8 or wherever you end up drafting, then great. So there's still so many little things that need to get taken out. First off, which is who the offensive coordinator is going to be. I know our Adam Schefter is reporting that Zach Robinson will be a candidate for that job. And then if that happens, then you at least know what type of offense you're looking at. But that's the first thing. You need to figure that out. But once you figure that out, like it's still quarterback, and that supersedes even figuring that out because you know you have to. You have no choice in figuring out who's on the coaching staff.
That's all I got for you. Is there anything I didn't ask that you want to add?
No, I think I'm good. Other than, I mean, I guess the one thing I'd say, and I harp on this always, is not always the consensus hire is the one that works out. Like you can look at the history of NFL coaching cycles. Well, there's a reason why there's so many cycling in and out of places, right? And it's because sometimes you go after the consensus hire, the big name hire, and that doesn't work out. If you hire to your culture, you have a better chance of success. If you hire to what you believe fits you and fits your organization and your franchise, you generally have a better chance of success. I don't know if Raheem Morris is going to succeed or fail. Anyone who tells you that they do one way or the other is taking a guess. But I covered Detroit when they hired Dan Campbell, and everybody mocked that hire, or a lot of people did. And look, they're still playing right now, right? And I brought up Mike Tomlin earlier. No one thought that Mike Tomlin was going to get the job in Pittsburgh. Well, Mike Tomlin's still in Pittsburgh and hasn't had a losing season yet. So when you look at this and you think of it, look at the process, and there are questions about that process that are going to get asked. For sure are going to get asked. But if they felt like this was the best move for their culture, maybe they figured something out through this process that directed them in an area that might work out for them. We'll see, though, Bailey. Neither one of us know. And if anyone tells you they know, they're lying to you.
All right, so we will see how that unfolds. I think we're all very eager to hear from Raheem Morris on Monday's introductory press conference. Let's switch gears to some basketball. Georgia Tech hosting the third-ranked UNC Tar Heels last night. In addition to that, they had won 10 straight games. They were undefeated in ACC play. Tech had lost 3 straight and kind of had a roller coaster of a year, but they end up getting the upset, winning 74-73. They stormed the court. Crazy finish.
Yep. First time they'd beaten a top 3 opponent in regular season since 2004. 5, but yeah, 4, and then 2005. That was the first time they had beat. First time since 2004 or 2005 since they had beat a top 3 opponent. So, huge win on a Tuesday night in McCamish Pavilion. So
let's go ahead and hear from Coach on the big win and the resiliency that he's really happy his team has.
I'll say the same thing in wins that I say when we lose. Like, it's not going to be easy playing for me because I demand a lot and I have a standard. And, I think, we see that. We see that, and tonight we seen that when we lock in, for 40 minutes, even, without our best player, and that's why I say it's the ultimate team win because our best player played 4 minutes. You know what I mean? And, it was easy. It could have been easy for the guys to fold, and just like with anything, as you're trying to figure it out, when you're used to a guy being out there and you're riding with him and the things that he do, we had some adjustment periods. We went down 11, but, I give our guys credit. They never folded during that whole period. They kept coming back. Miles kept us going, had a really big first half. Kyle played well, scored the ball. And then, I thought Ty really really played well. He didn't play small at all tonight. He played really big, and I keep saying this and about him, and Eb is he's one of those guys that he do and does whatever you ask of him. You know what I mean? Ty as well. It's not hard for those guys to get bit minutes, and then all of a sudden now they got to play major minutes. I think it's a testament to them working when nobody's watching. Because again, for them to come in there and play the minutes that they did in a game of that magnitude, that was huge. And obviously at the end, Nate made that big shot, and he made several big shots. Like I said, again, what a game. Happy for these kids, and somebody sent me my own quote, and I said it on the ACC weekly. I said I got a weird team. I love my team, but I got a weird team. And I think like I told them again, we want to drive the speed limit. We don't want to be the car that comes and get mad and get road rage, and then we go speed around the car and do all that stuff. We want to drive the speed limit, because when you drive the speed limit, that's consistency. That's consistency. You know what I mean? And that's what we're trying to get. But what a great win. Happy for these guys.
Questions?
It looked like in the beginning of the game, they were trying to have Baycott take over the game, feeding him down low a lot. Was your game plan to double him down low a lot? You did. It seemed like you did a decent job on him throughout the game.
Yeah, no, we definitely, we were definitely going to double him. We wanted to mix up our defense. And now Carolina's a good team. They're one of the few, along with Duke and Clemson and a lot of teams, North Carolina State. They're one of the few teams that Boston College. Well, I don't want to forget nobody, just in case we play somebody else again. I don't want to forget nobody. I don't want to forget nobody. I don't want any bulletin board material. But they have to have an All-American on the inside and out. That's tough. Like, I've been All-American and I played with another All-American, but we were guards. I haven't played with a not a big, not have a 1-2 punch, so it makes it hard. Really good supporting cast around those two guys, and we knew that they were going to feed Baycott. We kind of anticipated that, so we wanted to mix it up. Yes, we did do a lot of doubling. We wanted to protect our guys. You only had 15 fouls, and then once Bai got injured, then we had to protect EB. Picked up 3 in the first half. Ty's a bit undecided. We knew he was going to fight him, but then Tafara with his length, he helped us out a lot. So it was a team effort. But we did try to double him. We mixed in zone. We did a whole lot of different things out there today.
It was interesting. They got you guys in some foul trouble, but you actually had the key play there with getting Cadeau out with the. You seemed like you guys baited them out of the timeout to he was hand checking and grabbing on Nate, and you guys saw that and got him to foul out. He's their instigator. I guess kind of what goes into that philosophy of knowing for Nate, who's a freshman, to put him in that situation where he's got to draw a foul and all that.
And unless Nate told you something different, I don't think Nate even knew he had 4 fouls. I'm just taking a guess. You know what I mean? But in the second half, the one thing about it, we started getting to the hole. They started giving us calls, so we got in the penalty early. That helped us out a lot. When you can get in the penalty early, and you can go and shoot free throws, that really helps you. But I just think that we did a really good job. As the game went on, I thought we controlled it. Up until the end, we had some mistakes, and we got to get better in some of those late game situations. But I thought we controlled the game. We did a really good job, and Nate was in the middle of it. And I think that when you have Kyle, Kyle was going, and he really did a good job. And I think that what Nate does is I think that, you know, he's a balancing act for Kyle, and Kyle's a balancing act for him. I think that they've been playing well together, and, you know, that really helps us out. And then when Miles can get going the way he was going today and be a threat, you know, that helps out as well.
Update on Bai.
They said he had a head injury. Now I'm not for sure. You know what that means, and so that's all I was told.
And then, you know, winning this game, beating Duke, Mississippi State at home, do you have sort of this vision of what this will be moving forward for Georgia Tech basketball, where this is a really dangerous place for teams to come play?
Yeah, I think it can be. You know, the biggest thing for me is that I want to build consistency. You know, I don't want, you know, I love everything that comes with it, you know, with beating those teams, but I don't want it to be us only getting up for those type of teams. We got to get up for everybody. If that's what you want in your program is consistency, you know, you gotta live it every day, you know, and so that comes with working when nobody's looking, and then that comes with, you know, as you get an expectation, honestly, you don't get scared of it. You know, I think a lot of times, you know, you can get scared of it. You know, it's hard. You know, and I watch. You know, I know everybody in here watches a lot of NBA, and I tell you this, and me and Bonzi, we always talk about it. And so when I was in Portland, the Utah Jazz, we was in Portland. Utah Jazz came off of going to 2 straight finals, losing to the Bulls. And so here was this young upstart team in Portland. It was a strike-shortened season, and everybody was like, you know, we can't beat the Utah Jazz. You know, we played them in the second round of the playoffs, and I'll never forget that series because it was the hardest series I've ever been in my life. Because to try to beat them, like Stockton and Malone, like it was hard because you just couldn't beat them like that. Like you couldn't beat them. So it was hard. Like every game was hard. But we beat them. And when we beat them, I was 24, 25. I was in. They broke that up. You know what I mean? And I'll never forget that series because that was the series that kind of took us this way. So to have the type of wins that we've had, hopefully now we can start to move that direction. There's belief. There has to be belief. And so when you're reiterating things, like you got to go back and think about these things.
All right, and of course, more basketball tonight. Georgia hosting Alabama in a big one.
Yeah, both teams 14-6 on the year overall. Alabama's ranked 24th, coming off a big win against Auburn, and they had just beaten somebody else on Saturday. And then guess what? Doesn't really matter. Georgia's up 25-12 right now. 25-12.
We will have those highlights tonight at 11 on Atlanta News First if you want to join us for that. How we always get out of here, Lee, what is on your mind tonight?
You go first. You go first.
Me?
Yep, you go first.
Okay. Hawks. Deadline for the trade.
Oh,
Trade
okay.
deadline.
All right.
It's going to be a messy one. Tomorrow starts February. That trade deadline is February 8th. We still have no idea. I do think DeJounte Murray gets dealt somewhere.
Okay.
There's a lot of speculation it's going to be a 3-team trade with the Hawks and 2 other teams, probably the Lakers. I don't know, but I just have a feeling it's going to be a little chaotic once we get closer to the 8th. What about you, Lee?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and stick with what we were just talking about, Georgia basketball.
Okay.
They are currently laying it to Alabama right now. But goodness, if you can't shoot the 3, you better be able to rebound. And Alabama can't do that right now, and Georgia is. By the way, Georgia going off a overtime loss in Florida, at Florida, against Florida. They're a scrappy team.
Well, also,
I'm telling you,
don't
Georgia's
forget, that's
Georgia's
Mike
on the
White's,
rise.
That's Mike White's former
for his former team. Yeah. I mean, they're turning around pretty fast.
We'll keep you updated. Make sure to tune into 11 for those highlights.
Yep.
But for now, that will do it for this edition of Sports Tonight. For Lee Smith, I'm Bailey Burmaster. You all have a great night.